Kalen Drake wasn't prepared for the sheer number of people at Junon Spaceport. It was supposed to be some backwater station, a quiet place to get his feet wet, according to his instructor back on Earth, Terrara. The moment he stepped out of his shuttle, hundreds of aliens were pushing advertisements for ways to make millions of credits or offering the best weaponry the galaxy had for mere hundreds. His hand instinctively shoved his cred chip deeper into his shirt pocket, and it stayed there. When you get to the station, remember not to jump into the first freighter you see. Look around, take a peek inside if you can just know what you're getting into. They're all death traps, just some are faster than others, Kalen remembered instructor Terrara saying during their final exams. Humans were in huge demand, and Kalen had learned that early on. His Massachusetts and PA weren't doing too well with the farm back on Earth, especially since they discovered Earth could just import food for almost what it cost to farm locally. He always planned to help them just as they had helped him through his troubled childhood. Fights, girls, and sometimes both had defined his youth, but he'd kept his nose clean. The drug tests aliens used went back decades, and the Federation was strict about humans, especially with their newfound reputation. Booze, strangely enough, was allowed, something about tradition he'd heard. After about 30 minutes, Kalen had seen enough of the station. According to his Cal, there was a bar nearby that catered to humans. It took him 20 minutes to navigate the crowd, but he made it with his cred chip still intact. "Bourbon," he said, sitting at the bar. Several conversations stopped, and twice as many eyes fell on him. The bartender donned thick gloves and poured the toxic to them liquid into a glass. Kalen swallowed it down and asked for another before the bartender could take his gloves off. "Anything else?" the barkeep asked. "Just a glass of water, please." "That'll be all," Kalen said, pushing his cred chip toward him. He wasn't in any hurry. There were thousands of ships docked, and even if only 10% were looking for a new maintenance guy, every single one would jump at the chance to get a human on board. "I'll have a bourbon as well," said a very alien voice beside him. Kalen and the bartender turned to see the newcomer. "Can you even?" Kalen began. "No, it's for you, human. I'd like to have a word," the alien said. Kalen recognized the alien as a Pararan, a hybrid of avian and mammal species, vaguely resembling old Earth demons from books he'd read as a child. From the inward-turning horns, he deduced she was female. However, the way this Pararan, or Sarah Kaylor, carried herself was extremely dominant, uncharacteristic of her kind. They sat at a booth, and Sarah pressed a button, activating a privacy screen. People could still see them, but it would be hard to listen in. "You're looking for work," she said, more a statement than a question. "Honest work," Kalen said, downing the second bourbon. "No doubt," she said, watching him. Pararans weren't known for their social cunning, but they were among the Federation's pure predator species expert manipulators. "You have 10 seconds, or I'm walking," Kalen said. Sarah waited 8. "I'm willing to pay you double for double the risk." "Not interested," Kalen said, standing. Sarah reached out, a taloned hand faced upward in a gesture of submission. "Please, listen to me." Aside from her wings and clawed hands, Pararans looked a lot like humans, Kalen realized. Her expression was one of desperation, and Kalen could never turn away from someone in need. "I'll hear you out," he said, settling back in the booth. "Thank you," Sarah said. "I am Sarah Kaylor, of House Kaylor. You may have heard of us." "I'm new, fresh off the boat," Kalen said. Sarah seemed to understand the joke, but her reaction was subtle. "I need a human. Our kind cannot keep up with the schedule I will demand of them soon, and even I won't be able to. I need your stamina and skills. You wear the ring of the college, you're qualified to work on Paran ships like mine." Kalen twisted the ring on his finger. It hadn't been lifted in the crowded spaceport. to his relief. It was true he had trained on Pararan ships, one of the Federation's oldest and most powerful races. "Excuse my skepticism," Kalon said, "but my PA always told me there's no such thing as easy money." Sarah sat back, slightly offended but composed. "The pay equals the risk." "I won't lie, there's danger." "What danger?" "I could walk out of here right now and earn my family a retirement in 10 years. I'm sure there's danger. There's always danger, but I need you to be clear with me." Sarah took a breath. "Not here. You need to see what you'll be dealing with." Against his better judgment, Kalon nodded. They exited the bar, and Sarah led him to her ship. The ship in front of Kalon was a junk heap, a battered freighter, barely spaceworthy. He could only utter, "Oh." "It flies better than it looks," Sarah said. "Trust me, bet it can do the Kessel run in 12 parsecs," he muttered. Sarah paused, then turned. "A parsec is a unit of distance, not time. I watched Star Wars when it debuted 190 years ago." Kalon's jaw dropped, but he followed her inside, surprised by how well maintained the interior was. They arrived at a bulkhead. Sarah stopped and turned to him. "Here's where I tell you as much as I can. Beyond this point, you're committed. If you don't join my crew, you won't be permitted to leave." Kalon nodded. "So tell me," Sarah explained. "We're moving medicine. It's for one of our colonies under Terran control." Kalon opened a storage container. Inside were antibiotics, painkillers, and mood stabilizers enough to stock a hospital for a decade. "This stuff expired 20 years ago," Kalon said, incredulous. Sarah sighed. "We take what we can get. It's for people who need it now. And we don't have time. That's why we need a human." Kalon thought it over. The money was tempting. "How long?" "6 months. That's all I'm asking. Keep the ship going for 6 months, and I'll pay you double." Kalon ran the math in his head. "Wait, how much are we talking?" 40 credits an hour, 80 for overtime." Kalon blinked. "I'm just an apprentice." "You're a Terran apprentice. And that's worth more than most engineers." He sighed, knowing he couldn't turn down that kind of money. "All right, I'm in." Kalon woke with his alarm and forced himself out of bed. The last 2 days had been grueling, fixing essential systems before launch. He pulled on his boots and made his way to the kitchen, where the rest of the crew buzzed with excitement. Vorik Tazarn, the Pararan first mate, caught his arm. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "I'm fine," Kalon replied, though his sore muscles disagreed. He spent the morning in microgravity, fixing a ventral cargo door when Vale Roshin, the pilot, showed up. They talked as Kalon worked. "Why hire a human?" "We could have gotten a few Pararans for the same job," Vale said. Kalon shrugged. "Couldn't tell you." Maybe it's the stamina thing. They worked in silence for a while before the door started opening without warning. Kalon barely floated away in time. "Hey, I wasn't ready," he yelled. Later on the bridge, Sarah confronted him about the incident. It was a tense exchange. But Kalon apologized for his earlier assumptions. Afterward, he headed to the hydroponics bay to clear his head. Sarah found him there. They talked, and Kalon asked, "How did you see Star Wars when it first came out?" "The Federation has been watching Earth for a long time," she replied. "Drive-in theaters were easy to monitor. They watched the stars as the ship launched into space." Kalon received a message from his mother, Lyria Drake, saying his father Brannock was proud of him. The money Kalon had sent saved their farm. For a moment he felt relief. Then his comms buzzed. "Kalon Drake, you're needed on the bridge." The days passed. And Kalon found himself working harder and harder. He was outside repairing a damaged transmitter when something hit him. He checked his suit. It was leaking oxygen fast. Guys, I'm losing O2," he called out, panicking. He jetted back to the airlock. But his vision blurred as he missed it and blacked out. He awoke in a hospital, Morak, the medic, standing over him. "You made it." "Barely," Morak said. "How much did it cost Sarah this time?" Kalen asked. "A lot," Morak replied. "But you're alive." Kalen leaned back, wondering how he'd ended up risking his life on a junk heap for people he barely knew. But for the first time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. And it wasn't over yet. Kalen took a deep breath, feeling the steady rhythm of the ship's engine hum through his hospital bed. It was a comforting sound, constant and predictable in a galaxy that seemed to enjoy throwing surprises his way. "Sarah upgraded me, didn't she?" Kalen asked, still processing what Morak had said. The small, teddy bear-like alien looked up from his medic tablet. "Upgraded is one way to put it. You've got new lungs, and we patched up some muscle damage while you were out. Don't worry, nothing that'll make you less human." "But you'll notice a difference." Kalen stared at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the idea that he was now, in some ways, more than human. "How long was I out?" "Only a few days," Morak replied, hopping up to a nearby chair. "The repairs were quick, but we had to wait for the stasis effects to wear off before waking you." Kalen sat up slowly. No pain, no grogginess, just clarity, and Sarah paid for all of it. Morak hesitated, glancing down at his tablet. "Yes, the house covered the cost. But she took a risk." Kalen raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Let's just say the ship's finances are tight. That medicine run, it's the difference between success and failure," Morak said softly. "And now we're on a tight schedule." Kalen swung his legs over the side of the bed, standing. "I've got work to do." Morak tilted his head. "You should rest, Kalen." "The captain ordered it." Kalen smiled. "Tell her I'll rest when I'm dead. Right now I need to see this ship through." Kalen found his way to the bridge, each step making him feel more at home in his own body again. The repairs had left him with a new sense of energy, an edge he hadn't expected but could certainly use. When the doors slid open, Sarah Kaylor was there, standing with her back to him as she watched the stars streak past. Vael Roshin, the pilot, was muttering something about vectors while the first mate, Vorik Tarn, stood by, arms crossed as usual. Sarah turned as Kalen stepped in. "You're up," she said, not hiding her surprise. "You should still be in the med bay." Kalen shrugged, moving closer. "I've had enough bed rest for a lifetime." Sarah's gaze lingered on him, as if measuring whether he was fit for duty. Then she nodded, gesturing to the navigation screen. "We're behind schedule, but not by much. I need to know if we can push the engines harder." Kalen examined the data and ran his hand over the console. The ship's systems were older, patched together like everything else, but they were stable for now. "I can boost the output by about 15%, but we'll need to rotate some of the power through secondary systems. It'll burn hotter and faster, but it'll get us there." Vael, who had been listening in, looked over. "That means a tighter window on jumps." "Yeah," Kalen said, "but we'll make it in time for your drop." Sarah's expression didn't change, but Kalen could tell she was relieved. "Get it done in the engine room." The familiar hum of the ship had become a roar. Kalen moved with precision, his hands moving through the machinery like he was born to fix it. He made the necessary adjustments to the power flow, rerouting energy to optimize the ship's FTL drive. As he finished, he felt a presence behind him. "Vorik Sarn thought you were supposed to be resting." The Pararan first mate said, leaning against the wall, his tone neutral. Kalen wiped some grease off his hands. "Rest doesn't keep the ship flying." Vorik nodded, watching him for a moment. "You know, when Sarah brought you on board, I didn't think you'd last a week." Kalen smirked. "You and me both." The first mate chuckled softly, a sound that seemed strange coming from the usually stoic Paran. "You've proven me wrong." But you should know there's more going on than you realize. Kalen paused, meeting Vorik's eyes. What do you mean? Vorik hesitated, his wings shifting slightly. There's a reason Sarah hired a human. And it's not just for your stamina. This mission, it's more dangerous than we've let on. Kalen felt a knot form in his stomach. What aren't you telling me? Before Vorik could answer, a blaring alarm interrupted them. Kalen's hand shot to his comm. Bridge, what's going on? Sarah's voice came through, tense. Incoming. Unidentified ship on intercept course. Kalen exchanged a look with Vorik. I'll finish up here. You get to the bridge, Kalen said. Vorik nodded, his expression serious. Stay sharp. Drake is the first mate disappeared down the corridor. Kalen got back to work, making the final adjustments. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands were steady. He had no idea what they were about to face, but one thing was clear: he wasn't just here to keep the ship flying anymore. There was something bigger going on. On the bridge, Sarah stood at the center of the room, eyes fixed on the approaching ship. Vale was busy at the navigation console, trying to plot an evasive course. It's not Federation, Vale muttered. No markings, no comms. They're running dark. Kalen arrived just in time to hear the exchange. Pirates, maybe, Sarah said, her voice calm but strained. Or worse. Kalen moved to the tactical console, bringing up the ship's meager defense systems. We don't have much firepower. Shields are holding, but we're not built for a firefight. The incoming ship grew closer on the display, its silhouette jagged and ominous. They're hailing us, Vale said suddenly. Audio only. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Put them through. A crackling voice came over the comms, deep and mechanical. Freighter Behemoth, surrender your cargo, and no one gets hurt. Kalen exchanged a glance with Sarah. Cargo. So this was about the medicine run after all. Sarah leaned forward, her voice cold. We don't surrender. You'll have to take it from us. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then the voice replied, so be it. The transmission cut off, and the unknown ship surged forward. They're charging weapons, Vale shouted. Get us out of here, Sarah barked, but before Vale could punch the engines, the ship was rocked by a blast. Shields down to 50%, Kalen reported, gripping the console as sparks flew across the bridge. We won't survive another direct hit like that. Sarah's face was tense, her wings flexing slightly in a display of barely contained energy. Boost the engines, Kalen. Get us into hyperspace now. Kalen's fingers flew over the controls. The engines roared to life, pushing the ship to its limits. Hold on. With a sudden jolt, the behemoth lurched forward, and the stars outside the viewport stretched into lines as the ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the attacking vessel behind. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of the engines. Vale let out a breath. We made it, but Kalen wasn't so sure. He turned to Sarah, who was already watching him. This wasn't just about the medicine, was it? Sarah's eyes darkened. No, there's more at stake here than you know. Kalen felt the weight of her words, the hidden layers of their mission slowly unraveling in front of him. Whatever they were transporting, it was worth killing for. Then, it looks like I've got more work to do, Kalen said, a grim smile tugging at his lips. Sarah nodded. Get us back on track, Kalen. We're not out of this yet. Kalen returned to the engine room, his mind racing. What had he gotten himself into? The medicine run was dangerous enough, but now there was something bigger in play. Something that could get them all killed. And yet, as he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that, despite the danger, he was exactly where he needed to be. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was truly part of something bigger than himself, bigger than Earth. He wasn't just keeping the ship flying anymore. He was keeping a mission alive, and the stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined. And Kalen Drake was ready for whatever came next. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.